In his first public appearance since resigning, Boris Johnson says in his final few weeks as Prime Minister, he's determined to deliver what he promised when elected. With 11 candidates in the running so far to replace him, the rules of the Tory leadership contest will be decided this afternoon. The Prime Minister says he won't be backing any of those who want his job.
There's a contest underway and that must happen, and I wouldn't want to damage anybody's chances by offering my support.
We'll bring you the latest. Also this lunchtime, as temperatures in parts of the UK head for 33 degrees Celsius today, a heat health alert is issued. The President of Sri Lanka says he will resign after thousands of demonstrators stormed his official residence in protest at the state of the economy. The big birth control plan to control the number of grey squirrels and save the native red squirrel.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, it's a crucial day for England and Northern Ireland in the Women's European Championship, with both sides seeking crucial victories this evening.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. Boris Johnson says in his final few weeks as Prime Minister, he's determined to deliver what he promised when elected in 2019. In his first public appearance since resigning as Conservative leader, he also said he wouldn't want to damage any of his colleagues' chances of getting his job by offering them his support. Conservative MPs will meet later to draw up the timetable and rules to replace him as the next party leader and Prime Minister. Many of the 11 leadership hopefuls have set out competing tax plans as a central element of their proposals. The two-stage process will see Conservative MPs whittle down the candidates to two through rounds of voting before Tory party members pick the winner. Our political correspondent David Wallace-Lockhart reports.
Morning.
11 candidates fighting for one vacancy. Last night, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss became the latest Cabinet Minister to enter the race. In a video posted on social media this morning, she promises low taxes and economic growth.
I want the best for us all, and I'm the person to deliver that.
Some less prominent candidates are going for a more homemade approach when it comes to campaign launches, such as Junior Minister Rayman Chiste.
Hi everyone, it's Raymond here, the Member of Parliament for Gillingham and Rainham.
Tax and spend is the bread and butter of this contest. Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi told Sky News that claims he's being investigated over his financial affairs are a smear. He wants to cut taxes and the size of government.
So you're saying 20% cut in every department?
Well, that's what I want to make sure we get to. That will give me the headroom to be able to deliver tax cuts, which I want to deliver.
One of his leadership rivals, Tom Tugendhat, also wants to see lower taxes.
I didn't vote for the national insurance rise. I think I was one of a few Conservative MPs who didn't vote for that national insurance rise because I realised at the time that it was a tax on jobs. And given that we'd just come out of the 2 years of COVID, or just coming out of the 2 years of COVID that really hurt so many people around the world, what we really need to be doing is going for growth.
One candidate notable for their lack of any tax cut pledges is the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak. He's not been interviewed on camera yet, but his allies say this is a responsible position.
I do think you've got to be very cautious about promising entirely unfunded tax cuts in the heat of a Conservative leadership election, which, as you said, I think quite rightly, has been caused by a loss of trust.
Rishi Sunak's position doesn't seem to have damaged his start to the campaign. Of these 11 declared candidates so far, he has the most MPs publicly backing him at this point. A decision on a leadership bid is still expected from Home Secretary Priti Patel. There may be a lot of candidates right now, but it's possible the numbers could come down fairly rapidly. Today, senior Conservative MPs will meet to establish the rules of this contest. It's possible any candidate could need as many as 20 fellow MPs backing them just to get into the first round of voting. MPs are then expected to swiftly whittle the candidates down to a final two. Former Health Secretary Sajid Javid remains bullish.
Are you confident with your leadership bid? Do you think you can win?
Of course. Good morning. It's good to see you.
We could have a new leader very soon. Until then, he stays in the top job. With a visit to a London research centre today, he's not revealing who he wants to take over.
I can see the eyelash. There's a contest underway and that must happen, and I wouldn't want to damage anybody's chances by offering my support. I just have to get on. I have to get on, and in the last few days and weeks, the job of the constitutional function of the Prime Minister in this situation is to discharge the mandate, to continue to discharge the mandate, and that's what I'm doing.
We'll have more clarity on the timescale for succession shortly. David Wallace-Lockhart, BBC News, Westminster.
Let's get the latest from our political correspondent Nick Eardley, who is also at Westminster. What will the next few days look like, Nick?
Victoria, politics moves on quickly, doesn't it? You heard Boris Johnson there. A few days ago we were all hanging on what his next words would be, but already everybody in Westminster is talking about what comes next. Now, the early frontrunner in this campaign is the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, but the truth is a lot could change over the next few days, because as the number of candidates is whittled down, probably quite quickly, there will be a lot of horse trading between the campaigns, a lot of people backing candidates who are eliminated, who get behind someone else. And chatting to MPs this morning, the honest view amongst Conservatives is that this is a really open race and that nobody can be completely sure how it will look by next week. Now, tax is probably going to be the dominating issue, the key thing that Tory MPs and Tory members, when it comes to them, want to know about. So far, there are basically three camps. Mr. Sunak's camp saying no fairy tales, let's wait till we cut taxes when the economy's in a better place. There are some candidates saying let's meet in the middle, cut some taxes, but wait to cut others. And then there are some, like the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, saying cut taxes now. That is going to be a crucial debate over the next few weeks, the next few months, as the Conservative Party decides who our next Prime Minister is going to be.
Thank you very much, Nick. Our economics editor Faisal Islam is here because most candidates are promising big tax cuts, but they're not necessarily being clear about how they'd fund them.
No, that's right. Tens of billions of pounds worth of tax cuts. And so the extraordinary thing about that is not that a Conservative leadership candidate would want to cut taxes. That's quite natural, but for them. But we've seen these taxes just go up in the past few months. So there's a sort of Grand Old Duke of York type kind of description of how these will go up and potentially come down if a certain Prime Minister comes in. What you've got here, the backdrop to this, is in order to meet the borrowing targets in the Conservative manifesto, there's about £30 billion, 1% of the worth of our economy, of room for manoeuvre. Now, normally you want to keep that intact for a rainy day, but this is essentially being spent. And that's the difference between the 3% rise in taxation and 2% that has been spent on extra public services, things like social care and those NHS waiting lists you're trying to deal with. What we're not getting is how that will be cut back. Very few explanations of that. They say it will all be done by efficiency savings, but that rather raises the question as to what the current government, the same government, was spending the money on right now. So lots of promises of really quite massive tax cuts. We've just had tax rises, not much explanation of where spending might be cut. And at the moment, they don't say the borrowing rules are going to change.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Faisal Islam, who is our economics editor. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has attacked what he calls an arms race of fantasy economics by those Conservative leadership hopefuls. Sir Keir accused them of making unfunded tax promises and says some are now opposing tax increases they approved while serving in Boris Johnson's government.
Tory leadership race hasn't even officially begun yet. But the arms race of fantasy economics is well underway. Over the weekend, the contenders have made more than £200 billion worth of unfunding spending commitments. 200 billion. Let that sink in. That's more than the annual budget of the NHS, splurged onto the pages of the Sunday papers without a word on how it'll be paid for.
Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth is in Gateshead, where Sir Keir Starmer was speaking. What is he saying that Labour would do if they were elected to be the next government?
Well, Victoria, this was meant to be about Labour's vision for government, about the economy, about public services. But with all that noise around the Tory leadership contest threatening to drown out everything else, Sir Keir decided to weigh in. You heard him there accusing the contenders of making wild spending commitments. He said Labour would not make any unfunded pledges, but he would not be drawn on the specifics of Labour's tax policy. I asked him repeatedly whether Labour would reverse those increases in national insurance. He wouldn't say. He didn't spell out plans for income tax. He didn't spell out Labour's plans for corporation tax. Bear in mind, he has called for an early general election. He said he wouldn't write Labour's manifesto during a course of interviews. But remember, Victoria, Sir Keir Starmer's often defined himself as a leader against Boris Johnson. And there are some in his party, and there are plenty in the country now, looking to Sir Keir Starmer to say, what do you stand for? And specifically, what will you do if we elect you to government?
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you. Alex Forsyth reporting. The hot weather is expected to continue all through this week. Temperatures are forecast to reach up to 33 degrees Celsius today in southern England, with a heat health alert being issued in some parts of the UK. Scotland and Northern Ireland had their hottest days of the year so far on Sunday. The Met Office has issued a level 3 alert for southern England and the East Midlands. People are being advised to stay indoors during the middle of the day, drink plenty of water and take extra care of young children. John Maguire is in Teignmouth in Devon. What exactly does level 3 mean, John?
Yeah, Victoria, Teignmouth, as you say, a glorious looking day today, proper picture postcard stuff, but there's a flip side too of such lovely, glorious hot weather. There are 4 levels of heat health warnings. Level 4 is a red warning. That's the most serious. That's classified as a national emergency. We're one down from that at level 3, which is heat wave action. It's described as an amber warning. The idea is to warn healthcare workers, social care workers, that there could be a risk to the health of some of the most vulnerable people, the people they look after. And we've seen that some people are already taking heed of the warnings.
Do you mind if I put a hat on you, my lovely? The sun's very hot.
We may spend much of our time complaining about the lack of sun, but the advice this week is to avoid it.
Would you like an ice lolly?
Yes, please.
Here at the aptly named Summercourt Care Home in Teignmouth, the order of the day is sun cream, shade and a sedentary pace of life.
I don't like it too hot, I must admit. I don't like it that hot. But on the other hand, I don't like it too cold either.
It affects us all, but especially older people. All the more reason, as I say, we try and keep the house really cool. We've got fans on, the windows are open, but we try and keep the curtains drawn as well. So, we keep places shaded and just do as much as we can to, as I say, hydration, I think, is probably one of the most important things.
And at the Met Office in Exeter, they're predicting higher temperatures as the week goes on.
Heat health alerts are in place across much of England throughout this week. We've got level 2 and level 3 alerts in place. This is to basically alert health carers that the weather is going to be extreme. Particularly temperatures are going to be high by day and by night, and this can have serious health impacts.
Let's go. Go Wookies.
No mad dogs at the RSPCA's Little Valley Animal Sanctuary. Keith's walkies are strictly in the morning or the evening, and there are several ways to keep hot dogs cool.
We'll soak some towels in cold water and we'll leave it flat out in their kennel for them so they can lie on it. Just cools them down a bit.
Expect to see plenty of dogs panting this week as they struggle to regulate their body temperature.
If you imagine it, you're wearing a jacket indoors in the heat, you're going to sweat. Dogs haven't got the luxury of unzipping that fur and taking it off, so they need to regulate the temperature by sticking their tongue out and panting and keeping their pads cool. So it's all about that really, so making sure they've got a cool area to lay down, get their tummy cooler, obviously plenty of water.
The flip side, of course, is that many people will be taking their coats off and much more, soaking up the sun, lying on the sand and swimming in the sea. Summer, with all its pros and cons,
is definitely here.
One of the issues when the temperatures are so high in the daytime is that sometimes they also stay high overnight. Some of the forecasts are saying overnight temperatures might be around 20 degrees. So if people are struggling with the heat of the day, they just don't get a chance to recover overnight. Experts are saying, of course, we're not used to keeping cool. We're far more used to keeping warm, aren't we? But they say we might have to, on days like today, adopt a Mediterranean lifestyle, using lots of shade, closing curtains even when it's a sunny day, and trying to avoid work or physical activity in the middle of the day. Of course, some of us don't have any choice. Victoria, back to you.
Absolutely not. And get that factor 50 on, John, as well. Thank you. Heathrow has asked airlines to cancel 61 flights from today's schedule to try to cope with increasing demand. The airport says more passengers were expected in Terminals 3 and 5 than it could currently serve. It's the latest in a series of similar interventions by Heathrow, with tens of thousands of passengers affected as the industry struggles to recruit staff after shedding jobs during COVID lockdowns. A leak of documents has shown how Uber secretly lobbied UK politicians to help change transport policy in London. In meetings that were never declared, Uber's lobbyists met George Osborne when he was Conservative Chancellor, and a number of other ministers. The documents were leaked to The Guardian newspaper and shared with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists and the BBC. Uber denies its lobbying was secret, and the ministers say rules were followed. Richard Bilton reports.
When Uber arrived in London, there was chaos. Black cab drivers weren't happy and blockaded the capital. The then London Mayor, Boris Johnson, set up a review that could have limited Uber's expansion in the capital. The leaked documents show Uber was on a secret offensive, a concerted campaign to influence policy. George Osborne, the then Chancellor, went to a private dinner in California with Uber's chief exec, Travis Kalanick. An internal Uber email says it's better than a meeting in London because this is a much more private affair with no hanger-on officials or staffers. The meeting was never declared.
What should our viewers make of the fact that he chose not to declare that meeting?
Well, I think they should be very disturbed, frankly. It perfectly encapsulates the problem with lobbying and how vested interests capture ministers and decision-making.
The documents say there were more meetings with ministers, including Sajid Javid, Matt Hancock, Michael Gove and Priti Patel. They weren't declared.
Meetings between ministers and companies where business is discussed should be declared. But the guidelines are so vague, it is hard to be sure if politicians are breaking the rules.
The leaked documents show Uber felt it got what it wanted. They describe George Osborne as a strong advocate who would take up our cause when needed. And they boast that then Prime Minister David Cameron's senior staff are very with us. It looks like all that lobbying worked. Proposals that would have limited Uber's expansion in London were dropped.
It was scandalous what went on. And I still can't believe that it happened in this country. More to the point, nothing's ever been done about it. We just accept that's what's happened. OK, yeah, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister lobbied for one of their mates. Oh, fine, that's all right, move on.
Uber says new management has transformed every aspect of how the company operates, and its engagements with government are legal and transparent. The ministers say they properly complied with the declaration rules, and George Osborne says it was public policy to meet and persuade tech companies to invest in Britain. Richard Bilton, BBC News.
And Panorama taking us for a ride. The Uber Files is on BBC Two at 8 o'clock tonight and whenever you want on iPlayer. The time is 19 minutes past 1. Our top story this lunchtime. With 11 candidates in the running so far to replace Boris Johnson as Conservative Party leader, he says he won't support any of them because he doesn't want to damage their chances.
And I'll be live from a fan park ahead of Northern Ireland's match later. It is their crucial game against Austria in the Women's Euros.
Coming up on the BBC News Channel, Cristiano Ronaldo is not for sale. That's according to new manager Erik ten Hag, who says the forward is in our plans for the new season.
Sri Lanka's president has confirmed that he intends to resign in 2 days' time. The parliamentary speaker said the president had left the country after fleeing huge crowds which stormed his palace to protest against rising prices and shortages of food and fuel. But he insisted the president would return by Wednesday. Our South Asia editor, Unbarusan Ethirajan, is in the capital, Colombo.
Sri Lanka is facing both economic and political crisis, and the people have been coming in thousands to the protest site, and they are occupying the official residence of the president, the prime minister's residence, and also the office of the president. And they are saying they will not leave until the president and prime minister resigns, as they were demanding, accusing them of mismanaging the economy. Earlier, I went to the official residence of the president to find out more.
A historic moment for many Sri Lankans. They want to cherish it and capture it. Thousands have been coming to see the office of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa that was stormed by huge crowds on Saturday. A culmination of months-long protest against the president, accusing him of mismanaging the economy. Sri Lanka is bankrupt. It is struggling to import essential items.
Situation is so bad. We are here to throw away this bad politics. So I am happy to stay in here today.
Why did you come here to see this place?
We have to stay together in this situation. So that's why I'm here.
Kilometer-long queues outside a petrol station are a common sight. Without fuel, the economy has come to a standstill. Public transport severely disrupted. The desperation is unlikely to change even if there is a new government.
Amidst all this political crisis, Sri Lanka is still facing a crippling shortage of fuel. And look at these three-wheelers, auto rickshaws, motorbikes. They are more than 2 kilometers long. The auto driver here says he has been waiting in the queue for more than a day. And that reflects the ground reality. Unless the government gets their act together, the international community will not come forward to help them.
In the meantime, Sri Lankans are curious to know how their president lived. They are aware this sprawling compound will soon be occupied by his successor. Sri Lanka's political leaders say they are working to form a new government. Now, Colombo is running from pillar to post for loans.
An immediate change in government helps, but a new government that comes in by popular vote through an election will help even more, I think, in converting the goodwill of the international community to support Sri Lanka in the way forward.
Sri Lanka is a classic case of a country that was living beyond its means. The protesters say, at least for now, they have achieved what they wanted by removing Mr. Rajapaksa from power. But they are also aware this economic misery will not be solved anytime soon. Anbarasan Ethirajan, BBC News, Colombo.
A vigil has begun at a Buddhist temple in Japan's capital to remember the country's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was assassinated on Friday. Mr. Abe was shot while speaking at an election campaign event. Police say a 41-year-old man has admitted shooting Mr. Abe with a homemade gun. Our correspondent Marika Oi is in Tokyo.
That's right, Victoria. I am standing outside Zojoji Temple where Mr. Abe's vigil was taking place. Even though it was a family event, there were hundreds of visitors, including the British ambassador. We also saw the Russian ambassador who called Mr. Abe a great politician. We also had Japan's current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, all the ministers, as well as the lawmakers from the ruling Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, which of course just had that resounding victory in the upper house elections on Sunday. Now the ruling party, along with its coalition partner, have more than 2/3 of the seats in the parliament, which means that they have the ability to change Japan's pacifist constitution, which is something Mr. Abe has been very, very passionate about. So all the lawmakers were saying that they wanted to dedicate yesterday's victory to Mr. Abe. This temple is where Mr. Abe's funeral will also be taking place tomorrow. We don't have too much details about who will be attending, but at least we know that it will start at noon local time.
Thank you. Government scientists have come up with an unusual way of controlling the grey squirrel population. They plan to spike hazelnut paste with oral contraceptives to reduce the birth rate. They've told the BBC the research is progressing well and hope to be able to begin using it in the wild within 2 years. It could help protect the remaining red squirrel populations and woodland ecosystems, including forests planted to help tackle climate change. Our climate editor, Justin Rolat, has the story.
The UK's native red squirrel has been driven almost to extinction. They only survive in a few isolated populations, like here in the Yorkshire Dales National Park. The reason? Grey squirrels. They were first brought to the UK from North America in the late 19th century and have spread across the country. As well as muscling out red squirrels, grey squirrels are responsible for killing and maiming tens of thousands of young trees every year. The traditional way of disposing of pests is by shooting, but most people don't like the idea of squirrels being shot. It is only ever a temporary solution. Grey squirrels breed rapidly and populations can recover quickly, which is why government scientists are exploring a more humane alternative.
Whoa. You won't be surprised to hear that squirrels just love this. It's a kind of hazelnut butter. They find it irresistible. And what the scientists are doing is dosing this with contraceptives. Now, the idea is the squirrels will be unaffected, except, of course, they won't be able to produce any young.
So how do you ensure that only grey squirrels eat it? Well, the scientists have come up with a cunning plan.
So it has a weighted door at the front that an animal has to push open to access the bait.
And this is the bait here, so that's that paste.
Yeah, it has a metal case to keep out larger animals, and we raise it up on a stand so that smaller animals can't access it.
But where do you get squirrel contraceptives? The team are investigating 2 long-lasting birth control treatments. The lead scientist says progress has been good. She hopes the project will be ready to roll out in the wild within 2 years.
You could reduce them significantly, like bring them to the brink of local extinction or even eradicate them from some areas, provided that you can do a coordinated control over large areas.
Reducing the population of grey squirrels should help protect the remaining red. It could save the timber industry millions of pounds a year and should also help tackle climate change by reducing damage to the vast new forests the government has promised to plant to soak up carbon dioxide emissions. So it looks like the only loser is the grey squirrel. Justin Rolat, BBC News, the Yorkshire Dales National Park.
England are in action again tonight in their second game of their European Women's Championship campaign. They take on Norway, who are currently top of Group A on goal difference. Northern Ireland, who lost their opening match, will face Austria in Southampton. And that's where our sports news correspondent Jane Dougal is. Hi, Jane.
Hi Victoria, I'm in a fan park near to the stadium where you can hear it's very much a family atmosphere. We've got a band playing here, loads of fans have gathered, there's mascots, there's kids getting their face painted, you can even pretend to score a goal for Northern Ireland's women. It's a fantastic atmosphere, but you know, despite them losing 4-1 against Norway the other night, Northern Ireland fans were so pleased to see Julie Nelson score that one goal for them, because that was the first ever goal in a major tournament for Northern Ireland women, and 37-year-old Julie Nelson writing her name into the history books. So they will be hoping that they can score at least a few tonight against Austria. Northern Ireland are the lowest ranked country in this tournament, so this is their most realistic chance of getting at least a point tonight. And of course, Northern Ireland in the same group as England, who also play a little later on. They take on Norway. That's going to be England's toughest task so far this tournament. They're behind Norway on goal difference in the table. And England got off to a bit of a slow start in their opening match against Austria. Beth Mead, a few big names in their squad too, including the Ballon d'Or winner Arda Hegerberg. So England are going to have to put a stop to her tonight. And then, of course, the group match later on this week against the two home nations. Very much looking forward to England taking on Northern Ireland. Victoria.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you. Beautiful weather everywhere. Time for a look at the weather. Here is Chris. It's literally another scorcher, isn't it?
Yes, and actually we could get some extreme heat into next weekend. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. Today, though, has a decent shout of being the hottest day of the year so far. Just in the last 20 minutes, Kew in Greater London, seeing temperatures up to 31.8. So we're only 1 degree away from hitting that mark, and I think we probably will do this afternoon. 33, maybe even 34 degrees. And this time of the year, we can get maximum temperatures around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so quite late in the day. And it stays hot really through the rest of this week before temperatures really start to surge. Oh, it looks like we've got a bit of a gremlin, don't we? We will be back.
I'm really sorry, I don't know what's happening to the camera, but Chris, keep talking because the cameras are coming right back to you.
Today's dead easy. You don't need a camera. We've got loads of sunshine across the country with the highest temperatures actually focused across the Midlands, parts of eastern England as well. 33 degrees. I think we might even sneak a 34. But we've got some fresher conditions for Scotland and for Northern Ireland, where we just have a little bit more cloud compared with yesterday, but it's still warm. And after such a hot day, well, those temperatures, particularly across England and Wales, very slow to come down. So perhaps as you're heading to bed, 10 o'clock tonight, 25 in Birmingham, 23 in Cardiff, 26 degrees in London. So it will be quite an uncomfortable night for getting off to sleep. And then those temperatures will slowly ease down later on. Now, Tuesday, we've got a cold front, very weak feature, this area of cloud, a few spots of rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland. That sinks its way southwards. Sunnier weather pushes into Scotland and Northern Ireland later in the day. It will feel fresher again, temperatures just into the low 20s here, but pleasant weather. The highest temperatures, central and eastern England, where again we could see 32 or 33 degrees Celsius or so. For Wednesday, that slightly less hot air has trickled its way further southwards. There's a bit more cloud again for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where there'll be a few passing showers. Any other kind of spell of weather would be calling 28 degrees Celsius hot weather. However, things really start to heat up as we go through the latter part of the week and into the weekend, when we could be looking at some extreme heat here in the UK. Now, there will be lots of sunshine, those temperatures rising into the 30s, the mid-30s, maybe even the high 30s for the second part of the weekend. And what's causing this surge in heat is very hot weather that's actually building right now across Spain and Portugal. These deeper orange colours you can see here get drawn northwards into parts of the UK, and that will really start to boost those temperatures, as I say, through the weekend or perhaps into next week. The UK's highest temperature on record is 38.7 degrees Celsius. It could be under threat. We are looking at some very, very hot weather building into next weekend, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that over the next few days, Victoria.
Hopefully with the right cameras as well. Thank you very much, Chris. Such a pro. That's all from the BBC News at 1. I'm back on the BBC News channel at 5. Now it's time for the news where you are. Have a lovely afternoon.